What we're going to do is a virtual tour. We're going to pretty much, whatever was in your program of what this was, we're going to go follow that math. And we're going to follow kind of a virtual tour, different stops. I'm going to talk about programs and projects. I'm going to talk about our PM activities and give you a site tour. And we'll come up and we'll talk a little bit about challenges that we face. So the idea here is meant to be give you some understanding of what we do in OBI. So let's talk a little bit about programs and projects. Now, the program management team and the project management team, we have 55 active infrastructure projects covering $198 million of grant dollars. That's grant dollars. If you actually add up the cash match and the other matches, we're in the $250, $300 million range. So we have three major programs right now that are funded either by federal, from the Treasury, or we have state funded. The first one is ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, Capital Projects Fund from the Treasury. We were granted $117 million. If you know anything about this act, there was a little line item or a couple of line items in the act that said, oh, you can use coronavirus funding to build broadband infrastructure. A little line item, and so this whole kind of like spawned our whole infrastructure for a build for ARPA. 117 million, we have 21 projects. And over on the left-hand side, if you could read it in the back, we have our broadband serviceable locations, BSLs. And these grants and all our grants are focused on what we call underserved or unserved. And if you're unserved, you have a download speed of 25 and an upload of 3 or below. If you're underserved, you have 100 download and a 20 upload to 25.3. So our grants are focused on the people that don't have current service. Our grants are not focused on upgrading current networks from a perspective of people who have already received 100 by 100. And this is an FCC rating we're using in definition. So we're doing pretty good on ARPA in terms of the number of unserved and underserved in terms of the percentage based. And we are looking for a performance period at the end of 2012-31-26. It's a good sized project, lots of money. The next two projects, Connect New Mexico Fund and Student Connect, are state funded projects. And the Connect New Mexico Fund actually focused on middle mile and last mile. And you can see there's a little bit of a difference in the unserved and underserved, and the difference in the fiber miles and square miles because we have much more fixed wireless in our Connect New Mexico Fund. But that's only because of the nature of the applicants and the fact that the funding's direction was different than the initial ARPA, which was more focused on last mile fiber in the ground, and whereas the Connect New Mexico Fund, we have 22 projects for 58 million served, I was going to be more of a mix and match of middle mile and last mile. We do have some dates on the bottom here that look kind of scary to a few of my friends in the room. 6/30/26, yes, that is our spending authority, and we are asking for legislative approval to extend that date. So those of you in the room that may have one of these grants, Jeff here is working hard. We're working hard to get that date. So, but that doesn't mean you should stop work. You've got to keep going. Student Connect is a very interesting program that was set to focus on underserved students and households. And so in this environment, it's mostly all fixed wireless. But these are assistance grants. We can give up to $2.5 million without scoring and first come, first served basis. But the kicker is that if you apply and win one of these grants, you have to supply broadband to the students' households that you defined for 3 years. So in some ways, we're helping you pay for the infrastructure, but the provider has to pay for the ongoing MRC for 3 years. And it also has a similar date. We have two new pending awards that are in plan. One is a new one we just announced called Community Wi-Fi. And Community Wi-Fi is what it is. And we'll help build the infrastructure and access points if you want to run in and do Elephant Butte or do the state parks or the city or maybe a university or what have you, or in that area. So we're opening this up right now, and we're taking in applications. The big one that's coming, and the NTIA is for NTIA-B, and this is our $432 million current awards, In the data report, you can see some of the preliminary awards that we've given. NTIA is now in final approval of our proposal. And once that occurs, we'll get busy. But we're dealing with 60% unserved, 40% underserved with 29.99 fiber miles. Maybe we could have one more. 45%, and the split's pretty important here. 45% fiber, 40% fixed wireless, and then 15% low Earth orbit satellite. Now that's our current split. NTIA is still making some rulings on our proposals and activities, so until it's finalized, we won't move forward and have any final numbers. But these are our current projects. So our PMs are managing currently 55 infrastructure projects for a large set of numbers. We have another one I wanted to bring up. Since this is an infrastructure conference, we have available funding for what we call grant writing, engineering planning, GWEP. And it's a $100,000 maximum grant to help certain groups plan, engineer, design. Pueblo Laguna is using one of these grants to plan out their NOC for the Network Operations Center. We have another one that's just using it to do community broadband feasibility studies. So we still have $1.655 million available in this funding going through 6/30/26, but this is also one of these same dates that we're looking to get extended for the legislature as well. If anybody in the room, tribal, local government units, and you can partner with these. If you have a commercial provider, you can partner, but the fronts have to be these three because we're dealing with a public service and a public environment. Where are our projects? We have 55 of them. It took a while to make this map because you got to look at the maps and go, okay, exactly where is Animas? Where is Hatch? Where is Fence Lake? Where is Aztec and Bloomfield? Where is Raton, Colfax County? We're TRC. Thanks, Greg. You can see that the blues are the Connect to Mexico, the greens, the ARPA. And we do have a fairly good split, ISPs, cooperatives, and tribal. So we have 11 tribal environments, including Nambe, Santa Ana, Laguna, San Ildefonso. I won't name them all, but and it's there, OK Wingate, as well as down here in the Student Connect effort. But if you look, we have a fairly good smattering. Now there's some empty spaces on the map, but these are the ones that applied. So, we have in Petro County, you have Western and you have Plateau and Lico that are kind of filling the gaps in these spaces. But where the flags are, where the gaps are. And when we get the BEAD proposals done, we'll put the BEAD up here and you maybe see a much more fuller map of covering the geography of New Mexico. So in terms of progress, one of the things that came up is, okay, how long do these projects take? Well, when you get the grant application and you get the project plan, it's typically 23, 25 months, effectively a year to 16 months to plan and design and get permitting. A lot of us know that the permitting sometimes goes 24 months or what have you. But the construction actually sometimes is really quick. If we can get the permits and get everything done, get all the make ready, we can get them into the 8 to 10 month time frame. So the plans we've seen have been 23, 25 months. Our fastest project is OSO Internet. They did it from agreement to go live in 11 months. But they had all kinds of pre-approvals from Navajo Nation and Raymont Navajo Nation to transit the BIA roads. So in some ways, it's a little bit skewed, but we have ARPA's doing well with 7 in. We have a lot of construction. We have about, I know it says 468. It doesn't sound too much, but actually, when I get into a little bit later, I'll talk about the process of, we're not expecting every household to be connected in this grant. You get to a point where you've turned it on, it's live, and you go through the process of getting subscribers. So we're doing pretty well overall, 55 projects moving forward. I want to get more up here. We've had a couple of ribbon cuttings already on live projects. We've got some more coming. So actually in the first quarter of 2027, we're expecting this number for live operation to go up significantly. Connect to Mexico Fund should go up, and the Student Connect, which are fixed wireless, should go up quite a bit as well. So I do this presentation next year. Numbers should be all flipped, we should see quite an increase. All right, so there's a pun on this slide when I say this, maybe you'll find it. But the thing about what we're doing, as I mentioned, unserved and underserved. We talk about rural areas, but actually we're touching people that may not have connectivity at all. This is our first customer out of OSO Internet out by Pine Hill. And a young lady and a family moved out in the outskirts, mainly because they wanted to kind of get away. A lot of these places are kind of out of the way and where they're putting the fiber in. But she was so grateful. I can now work from home, take care of my kids at the same time. I'm so grateful. She has 3 kids under 5, and she had to go to the top of the hill. You've heard these stories. You go to the top of the hill to get cell phone coverage so she can talk to her mother. Now she can work from home, do nursing. And actually, I think every one of our providers, anyway we have, will tell one of these stories. Really, you touch people's lives. I know it sounds rudimentary, but the second person we went to here said, well, I can order my prescriptions online now. I know for all of us that sit in this room, we may have always had that for years, but for these people, they haven't. And that's the purpose of these grants, is to bring this level of people and constituents or residents or people up to the same level so they can work from home, study from home, healthcare from home. So really touching people's lives. And one of these is Annabelle and one's Jezebel. You can take your pick of who's who. All right, so let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about project management. This is our truck, our OBI truck. We like to drive it. We can only drive it at the speed limit or under. There's a GPS monitor on this thing. We got one of our people in our room that likes to drive 85. I don't think he's had his license suspended yet, but he might have. But, you can go up and fast a truck and what have you. But it's a 3500 Dodge Ram. It's really fun. I like it to drive it, but it takes about an extra hour to do anything when you go someplace because it's especially when you go into some of the small towns. I have no idea what the speed limit is. Right. All right. So if you don't mind, the people on the slide. If you're here, would you mind stand? This is our project management team. And I'd like to introduce you, if you don't mind. Richard, will you stand, please? Catherine, Eric here. Is Mr. Morris here, or is this Eric? Okay. All right, so I will introduce by name Richard Govea. He's our bureau chief. There's Richard. He's in charge. We are in charge here. Richard has a very illustrious past with broadband infrastructures, done public libraries. In fact, he and I went to Magdalena last year, and he said, let's go check on the library. The library knew him, remembered him, and said, hey, my router's not working. Would you fix it? Next, Catherine Irvin. Catherine's got a PMP, very well distinguished. She is much beloved by all the grantees and sub-recipients that she works with. So she helps us keep on track on things. Mr. Morris isn't here, but Mr. Rogers is, Eric. Eric, and that is the Aaron Rock spelling, so we love that. But Eric's a technical sales consult background, and he's the guy we go to say, I'm sorry, what's conduit? What is this? What is fiber? He's the man that actually a lot of us go to and just say, could you please help us understand how all this put together and things. So he's a great resource from that perspective, and he has a number of projects which we all work together. We do have a number of project coordinators, program coordinators, Andrew for BEAD, Andy XL for ARPA, Neela is taking over the state grants, and Lane we just brought online for permitting, which I'll talk a little bit about permitting in a few minutes. Our tribal liaisons are very important, Victory and Gabe. And Victory's actually Valerie, that's her driver's license name. But when she initially went out for some site visits or met the tribal teams, we need to give you a different name. So they gave her the name Victory. And she goes by Victory now, so we love that. Ovi, you're here in the room, stand up. This is our broadband for education. Senate Bill 401. Ovi's been with us in the state a long time, PFSA, right? And he's now in charge of our new transition and activities for the State Education Network, as well as E-Rate. And last, we have Monica. She's not here today, but she's going to transition from project management to some internal support for our CRM and activities. What do we do? Spend a few minutes on what we do. It's not that exciting, but it can be. You know, we've got to do a lot of desk work, a lot of administrative work. But we do get to travel around in our truck. We have a lot of responsibility in terms of the money. I just showed you 198 million in grants that the project managers oversee. We also then have BEAD coming for 432, so we're going to be clicking up into the 800 million range. Budgets, reimbursements, schedules, I'll cover each one of these individually. Close out, and a new area that we've kicked off in the past few months called interagency permitting assistance, but it's effectively working with SHPO, State Land, BLM, and SHPO is the State Historical Preservation Office that drives a lot of the cultural reviews. So compliance and site visits, yes. Oh, Mitch, there's your contract. How's that? You like that? It's as clear as it was when have you ever read it? Have you read the contract? Well, the good news is the first 25 pages of everybody's contract are exactly the same, except for the money and things. So, but there's eligible expenses. In some ways, our job is to make sure that we have a lot of federal and state rules, procurement, prevailing wage. We do have to check to make sure these are being complied with. We're using taxpayer federal or taxpayer state funds. So those have to be spent correctly. We have eligible expenses. We need to make sure that they're not buying coffee cups and, but they can buy a hard hat and they can buy construction tape and vests because it's part of broadband infrastructure. Over here on the site visit side, which is where the pictures will show the tour here in a few minutes, is more about understanding validation. Those of us that go out on the site visits, we ask 1,000 questions. Where is the conduit? Where did you do this? Why did you do that? Can I see the fiber roll that you bought? Can I see your splicing trailer? Hey, we bought you a fusion kit. Where is it? Can I see it? Right. So in some ways, the site visit is about validation. Here we have a picture, which is from Mitch's project. We want to make sure there's actually fiber in the connection box on the house, but at the same time, that's our job, is to make sure that you said you were going to connect these people up. Have you done it?
And it takes another step and you actually use it.
Yeah. Budget. Here's an exciting topic: budgets and reimbursement. When we set up the budgets, we say, okay, we have a cash match or a cost sharing situation. So in Mexico, we have a 25% minimum that the companies have to invest in the project. Then we give the grant money. The budget can actually be grant plus in kind. In kind is an asset on the books. It could be the backhaul line for electric co-op. It could be the poles, what have you. We give them credit for that. And the budgets are all broken down, as you might expect: design, permitting, construction, make ready. We do have a 5% cap on administration fees. So a budget can't come in and say, I'm going to spend 10% on people that are filling out reimbursement requests. No, you can't. You only spend 5%. But when we talk about reimbursements, it's actually giving you the grant money. So we're a reimbursable state and a reimbursable set of projects. So if you rent an excavator, send me the invoice, but it's an invoice and a proof of payment, and I'll pay you. We'll pay you. If you bought the fiber reels, we'll pay you. If it's specific and related to the broadband deployment, we'll pay you out of the grant. But you have a copay. I call it a copay, I call it a State Farm deductible. If you give me a $10,000 bill for a fiber reel, I'm going to pay you $7,500 because that's our cash match and that's your investment that you have to play in. So that's actually important, and we do available spend. And so we spend a lot of our time, 30–40% of our time, working with the money, working with the reimbursements process, and we know it's laborious, and we know it's tedious, but effectively it's a $200,000 expense report. So if you guys are going home and you're going to file an expense report, that's what we're doing here. But that's how the state, we confirm that you're actually spending what you need. Schedules. Yes, we look at schedules. There are performance periods built into the agreements. And those performance periods, as you can see here, and I've already talked about how we're working to extend the ones that say June. But those performance periods are, if you don't get it done in 3 years of the signing date, more or less, that's what you're supposed to do. We actually have a budget period on the back end. So effectively, if you don't finish by the performance and budget periods, you'll have to finish on your own money. So the grant money is only available for this period of time. And really, we can break down all the different schedules, but really, from a reporting perspective, we're interested in construction start, construction end, operations start, operations first customer, the things that really matter. And as I go into closeout, the most important date that we have is called substantially complete. So if we go through the fiber drops and we go through the make ready testing, service launch drops, the single most critical milestone that we have is called substantially complete. And that's a federal term and a state term for when the network that you've purposely designed is fit for purpose, it's live, if you can fill its primary obligations, and it was designed to perform delivering services. So what that means is that we need you to be lit. The fiber has to be lit and working. We want customers as well. We don't need a lot, we need a few that you can prove it out. So you end up with a situation that if you have a sectional, Pueblo of Jemez is a good example, Tularosa is a good example where we've got sectionals. They're going to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay, we've got actually customers in phase 1 in Jemez. We actually have customers in Dog Ranch in Tularosa, but they still have more to do on the grant. We're not substantially complete, so we get all 3 done. Whereas like Valley down in Columbus or Oso, it's a grid. And so TRC as well is a grid, and Cherry Decker is a grid. So you light that, and you've got a nice compact unit, and that's what you do. So we go through the process, but the way the agreements are built, we'll go through the substantially complete. We'll go out and do validations. We need as-built, speed tests. You have to prove to us that you have done the work. When I say we, I mean the providers. Go through closeout, final RFRs, and then there's an annual report period. There's actually something that runs through here called the federal interest period, or the state has something similar. But effectively, you're using federal funds or state funds to put an asset in the ground or in the air. And doing so kind of creates a depreciation schedule. So you cannot remove that asset for that federal interest period. So with an ARPA, it's 2034. Student Connect is a 3-year, I think 5-year under Connect the Mexico Fund. But you go into a kind of a annual report type process. So this is closeout. This is where we wave the flag, have site visit, or have ribbon cuttings and site visits and go through. Permitting. This is New Mexico, right? A lot of yellow. The yellow is BLM. The gray is state land. And everything else is either private or what have you. Did you know of our 77 million acres in New Mexico, 17.3% is BLM. 11.5% is state land, New Mexico State Land Office, which is trust land. Forest Service has 11.8, tribal is 7.7, and then there's 46% private. So when we're talking about getting permits, getting rights of way, and running along Highway 9 here, this is Animas, Wichita, Cotton City area down Boot Hill. You're dealing with having to transit through, and these are the land jurisdictions. Who owns the land gets to say whether or not you can come through and for what purpose you do. So in some way, we're working on the interagency of pulling these groups together with our providers, trying to take a little bit of a lead to do pre-review and consultation reviews that help kind of grease the skids. So here's a case study. This is Mitch's. It's for Fort Stanton. It's for disaster relief grants. And what we're going to do is PVT is going to do, they'll be running a main line from Lincoln, from their spot in Lincoln to Capitan. And during the last set of fires, Capitan is an isolated area with no connectivity. No connectivity. So we know fires occur in this area. You all know about Smokey the Bear. It came from Capitan. So this will actually provide a US 380 from Lincoln to Capitan, provide a backbone line that will keep Capitan from being isolated during any other type of event. But, and PVT will be connecting homes and ranches along the way. They'll be coming down into Fort Stanton. The thing about this project is you notice that Fort Stanton, if you've ever been down there, is a little island inside BLM. And Stony River Caves is off to the bottom left. But we'll be coming down, and he'll be coming down in 220 into Fort Stanton. The issue we're going to have at this point is we're in what we call Section 106, which is effectively cultural reviews and historic reviews for the land. BLM covers its own land, but the State Historical Preservation Office controls the cultural sites on state land. And so when you come out of BLM and before you go into Fort Stanton, there's like what, a 1 mile area that you're going to be crossing, and we need to make sure that we're not digging up cultural artifacts and things. So this whole process. So as you know, federal shutdown, right? We're having a little bit of delay and starting to get a little concern and a little anxiousness, right, Mitch? So I'm a little bit, because there's a lot of work here to be done. But one of the things that we found, if you do pre-reviews and pre-consultations before you go in, this makes this process a lot easier. They know you're coming. And with OBI setting up to take the lead, and we've talked a little bit about this lead agency concept, because once BLM takes the lead, it's a little bit of where are they, what are they doing? So we're looking at getting a tighter relationship, not only with BLM, but also with Forest Service and others. So let's take a little picture tour. Hopefully you guys in the very back can see these. It's what we do in our site visits. I decided to break this down by types of infrastructure, meaning you're going to bury it, you can put it in the air, fixed wireless, home, fiber, and then I'll talk a little bit more about cultural. Nice big reel of conduit over there, nice orange, we're going to put in the ground. One of the design companies that worked for one of my projects came to us and said, you know, we recommend 2-inch conduit, 2-inch diameter conduit. Well, that's not what normally people put in. They put in 1 3/4. Why 2 inches? He says, well, where we come from, the gophers and prairie dogs can't get their jaws around the outside of a 2-inch conduit, but they'll chew through 1 3/4 or 1 and what have you. In my project, the grantee said, okay, that's fine, but we can't afford 2-inch conduit, so we went back. But we'll talk a little bit about buried. So the first thing that they have to do is put it in the ground. There's a rock saw walking through Kamado lava fields. The thing looks like it's out of Mad Max or Dune or something, right? Right. And that's the lava. So if anybody wants a little show and tell of it later, you can come up and put a piece of lava or an alpine in your hands. You may or may not know, but from Kamado lava fields over by Feds Lake, there's a semicircle arc that travels up through Mount Taylor, Valles, Cadares, Ocate, and Catalan Mountains. And it's all part of the same volcanic field that runs through that area. It's called the Jemez Lineament. And this is what's in there, and we got to break it. So the question I have is, why are we burying it? Why don't you put it on a pole? There is no pole. There's no electric pole. Where I need to bring and do drops into homes and laterals, there's no poles. So we've got to go through that. And that's the rock saw for trenching. Here's a rock breaker for an area for Jurassic era sandstone, or for it's called Zuni sandstone. There's a lot of this throughout the state. Breaking it up. This process here was costing about $40 a linear foot to do this for 30,000 linear feet. So and again, why bury? Well, it's because there's no electric, there's nothing to run, so we have to do this to get it through. So the other thing for burying, we see plows. They're actually a device that will actually bury the conduit at the same time. Or my good friends in Tularosa, in the Tularosa Basin, they just have dirt. So they can use a little excavator. But laying the groundwork for the conduit and then up into the pedestal that would run to the house. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of blowing fiber or pulling fiber through these lines, but that's what they do next after they get the conduit laid. Now, you've probably heard, you may have heard this term, handhole. What is this thing? It's a vault where we put the cable. So here's a picture of them burying the cable, burying the handhole, excuse me. Inside the handhole is a cable structure, case where they splice and they put it in. It's used for distribution. Typically, you'll see these at connection points or road cuts where they want to go here and take a left-hand turn and run the distribution lines down another street, another area. And here's what you see. You're going to see these poles. So if you, now, not everybody has these. Sometimes they have little orange plastic poles. But if you go from here to Santa Fe and go up La Bajada Hill, look on your right, you're going to see these little orange poles up the hill. And now you're not going to be able to drive anywhere and not see these because you're going to look and you're going to my wife hates me right now. Oh, there's one over there. There's one over there. Yeah, I want to stop and go look and say, what do they say on the side? But a lot of times they just say 811, call this number for locate. So, yes, I have called the number a few times and wouldn't, okay, or whatever. So, but anyway, so this is what you see at the end of the day. And these are the kind of the distribution points in buried. A little bit about aerial. Look up. Poles. What we have a picture on the left is actually the hand stringing, where they're actually rolling the fiber up and stringing it across. Right, this is your side. And they're actually running the fiber line across lash and strand, or strand and lash, the concept of running the fiber. Here we got a guy in the middle that has to be part of that process on a lift. I asked this question last time. I said, what if they get stuck? What happens? What happens if they can't get down? He says, well, no, they have to have special training and certification to know how to effectively rappel out of these bucket trucks. So it's it's not an easy job, let's put it that way. Now, the pole process is pretty complicated from a point of view. Who owns the poles? Sierra, Otera, CDEC, JMAC, Kit Carson. Yeah, I can name 15 of them. So, P&M, sorry, that's close. Who owns the poles? Well, they own the poles. You have to get a pole attachment permit. You have to go through load analysis. You have to go through clearance analysis. We have at least 2 projects that I know of that use drones in the design process to fly over all the poles and do all the mapping, which has actually made it quite efficient from the perspective of getting the maps and the routes. And also you get the KMZs and the other things set up. But you still have to go drive the route and see if that clearance is too low. We're going to have that replaced. In a couple of weeks, one of my projects will be doing make ready and swapping poles.